Hello. Happy Earth Month, everyone. Thanks to those of you who are joining us live. I'm just going to make sure that our stream is set to go, and we are on. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. So we have a really great talk for you today. As it being Earth Month and tomorrow's Earth Day, we're going to be talking a lot about terroir, what it means for our specialty niches. We have some really great panelists with us today, so I think we can just dive straight in, and I'll let you guys all introduce yourselves. We can kind of just go in a circle, whoever wants to start.
Okay, I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Gonzalo Bertelsen. I'm the head winemaker for Viñedos Veramonte and Neyen de Apalta, which are one of the top organic and sustainable wineries in Chile. I studied agronomy I started in 1996 and in 91, sorry. And in 1997, I joined the Chilean Associations of Winemakers in Chile. I've been working as a winemaker for more than 30 years. And 10 years later that I got graduated, I studied a Master's of Enology in Adelaide in Australia. And since then, I have been working in different wineries in Chile, in Spain, in Argentina. And now I work for Veramonte, which is 100% organic and has biodynamic practices. Also, we're based in Casablanca appellation in Chile, which is an appellation that is closer to the ocean, so it's got a lot of influence from the Pacific Ocean.
Awesome. Sounds delicious.
Yeah, I can go next.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Zhao. I am the founder of 50 Hertz Tingly Foods. We sell Sichuan pepper products. For those who actually don't know Sichuan pepper, it's called huajiao in Chinese. It's the super floral, citrusy, but also numbing and tingling spice. I'm from Sichuan. I was born and raised in Chongqing, China, and now I live in Washington, D.C. I want to introduce this novel spice from my hometown to the rest of America and the rest of the world because I think it's a super unique flavor and sensation. So we're not just selling the peppers and oils, but we're also making snacks and all kinds of applications using this unique spice and sensation. My background is actually a clean energy economist. I worked for the World Bank. That's why I'm living in Washington, D.C. So sustainability, terroir, earth is all of my jams. So I'm super excited to be on this panel with all the great speakers and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, I must just quickly to interject. My partner was making some chili crisps yesterday, and he used the red peppercorns.
Oh, nice. As you can see in my background.
Yes.
They're super pretty. They're like flowers.
Yeah, it's delicious. Today we get to try it, so I'll send you a picture and let you know how it went.
Oh, yes, please.
That's awesome. I guess I can go next. My name is Brian Ralph. I work for a company called Bona Furtuna. I'm president and COO. And what we do at Bona Furtuna is import and manufacture really incredible Italian pantry products. So our brand started with extra virgin olive oil, organic, leaf produced, in a small little farm outside of Corleone, Sicily, where the majority of our trees are all heirloom varietal olives. And we have the ability to pick all of them within 24 hours and get them to the mill and press them. So the juice is about as fresh as you can absolutely get. It's incredibly delicious. And then we kind of expanded our views to heirloom tomatoes to make incredible tomato sauce, ancient grain wheat, which is in Sicily is one of the best wheat growing regions in the world, to make pasta, and incredible sea salts from Trapani, which is probably has 600 to 700 years worth of salt making experience, and to try and work with small producers to bring forth the taste and tradition of the lands and into the U.S. So that's what we're doing over here.
Amazing.
Great. All right, so I'm Shunan Teng. I'm the founder of Tea Drunk. We are based in New York City. We specialize in teas from China's top terroir. These are all historic locations that have been known for producing the best tea for generations. We also focus on the heirloom cultivars. I'm actually in China right now. I'm in one of China's top tea location. It's called Lushan. It's one of the coldest tea region. It's very foggy. So other than producing the world's most prized teas, we also focus a lot on tea education as well. I myself is the TED Ed educator for the history of tea.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for explaining everything. Yeah, we have a really great panel for you guys today. Obviously, we have some very different niche products, all kind of with that same idea of how much the land really makes a difference to what we do and what we produce, and how important it is to not only pay attention to quality, but also pay attention to the land and how things grow and the sustainability side of things. So I wanted to start off today with kind of some common ground. We're all food nerds. So we deep dive into one ingredient or one location or, one taste. And I figured that was a really great place to start. So, and I know when I'm in a room filled with people who are passionate, as we all are, about something super specific, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks everyone who's watching. And if you're watching on the recording as well, thank you guys for joining. So my first question will hopefully give us a chance to share how we ended up obsessed with our one terroir-specific item. So could you tell us how you found your niche and what's made you decide to dedicate your life to it? And then a tag-on question, if you want to add a little bit to it, how has finding this niche opened you up to exploring the importance of terroir? Brian, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. So how I came upon Bona Furtuna, I met one of our co-founders who's just an incredible human, and his backstory is he basically went to Sicily and looking for the piece of land that his grandmother was born on, and he found it and decided to work with the land and work with the people there to create this really holistic and incredible farm to produce some world-class olive oil. My background is in specialty food. Before getting into olive oil, I was into specialty cheeses. And so when we connected, it was kind of a no-brainer to see something that was not only an incredible food product and olive oil, but what else this unique piece of land could give. And so just the whole idea of having the olive trees, this grove, and the herbs that are growing in between it, and the tomatoes off to the side, and how all of those systems are kind of working together to create, not only a really healthy soil for all of the products to grow, but unique flavor profiles and complexities of the end product as well. So it was really kind of fun to see that at first, and then continue to deep dive in year after year on what more this land has to offer when it's working together with itself. So yeah, that's kind of how I came into Bona Furtuna and olive oil and everything else.
Great. And yeah, I know you talked a little bit about how you kind of wanted to bring this item from your hometown to other people, but if you want to add a little bit to that about how the terroir specific aspect excited you when you began.
Brian's sharing was so interesting because he started with this piece of land, right? And then he found how amazing it is, and then and the products and everything. For me, it's actually sort of reverse that process. I went home for Chinese New Year in 2018. My mom was making a cucumber salad at the time. It was just a super easy recipe. Vinegar, soy sauce, and chili oils. But she finished it off with the green Sichuan pepper oil. At that point, I have lived all over the world. I was working in the Middle East. I then moved back to the U.S. I was born and raised in China. So tasting that green Sichuan pepper oil and that super floral, citrusy, and the numbing sensation was a really endearing and visceral reminder of my childhood. But also, I don't find that flavor profile and especially that tingling sensation anywhere in the world. And then I started doing research about. I mean, so I brought back this oil back to the U.S. So my friends and family were cooking, applying it to pasta and everything. And people are saying, "Oh wow, I think this flavor and sensation could go beyond the Chinese food. It's just a new sensation from this spice indigenous to Sichuan and to that part of China." So I started doing research, and then I realized, wow, actually, there's a lot more than that because Sichuan pepper, we call it Sichuan pepper, but it's actually a misnomer because it's not just produced in Sichuan, right? It's produced in multiple provinces in that whole area. The land and the climate and the altitude of the mountains in that area produces this spice. It's just that Sichuan food is so famous, and it's prevalent in Sichuan food. So I just learned more on how it's different, and also there are green Sichuan pepper oil or green Sichuan pepper, whereas you see in my background it's the green, and the two varieties are like white wine and red wine. There are two varieties, and also because of the land, the green variety is more floral, more citrusy, like the white wine. And because it's the lower altitude, it grows more southern in the southern region. So all of that, I just thought it's such a unique and unique spice that I can tell people more about. And when we talk about terroir, it's mostly wine and tea and coffee, and But I thought any product actually has the terroir aspect to it. So that's how I actually started it, and we're actually making a lot of headways. And we found a little community in the U.S. Who likes a little tingling sensation.
Amazing. Shunan, how about you?
Yeah, so my journey, I think, started when I was very young, before I even have conscious mind that I'm going to be in the business of tea. So growing up in a foodies family in China, I've always been very familiar with how location is a key factor in contributing to the quality of the food product, and sometimes even other products as too. I think in China we have a long history of location dictating the quality of the product, not only just food, but even things like inkstone, paper, even things like that. So even in like Tang Dynasty 1500 years ago, in the first tea book, the classic tea, it's already been laid out that its location, cultivar, and processing, that's the key factors playing into the quality of the product. And as I grow older, and I started to get geekier and geekier in that aspect of the food product. So to me, to be able to go to all these historic locations where I know the past connoisseurs have visited, and enjoying tea that's produced from the same old tea tree that maybe a artist and a scholar in the past have also enjoyed tea from, that was the initial draw for me. Of course, as I get geekier and geekier about the subject and start to get very involved with the production of tea and then the cultivation of tea as well, and just see how damaging monoculture is to the industry, I just become more, I have a sense of duty now towards tea. So I think at the very beginning, and then even nowadays, that I want to do things for tea, but I think it's all driven by this passion of a lost romance that I think connects me with past connoisseurs in the grand understanding of the aesthetic of taste.
Beautifully said. I also wanted to just quickly touch on, I know that you had mentioned, Shunan, that with, there's a lot of history in China with terroir, and that it's kind of for a lot of different products. I know there's also multiple words, right? So can you share some of the words and like what they mean?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. So obviously terroir is, I don't know if that's an official English word or not. It's borrowed in French, which I cannot pronounce it correctly. I think Yao has a much better pronunciation. But in Chinese, we have several words for the concept, but different aspect of the concept. So sometimes scholars like to use the word fengtu, but fengtu involves heavily on the culture and not so much on the factors that contributes to the taste of the product produced on the piece of land. So that's a word I actually do not want to use very much. But Chinese also have a word called 正产地. So which means the true origin of something, and that's usually speak of a prestige of a location in relationship to a specific product. So this is also why a lot of the top terroir for China for the tea, they will be named as like things like True Cliff, True Mountain. It's all a build up on that same word or same concept.
Awesome.
Can I add something to what Shunan just said?
Of course, yeah.
It was so interesting because I think the terroir concept is it's borrowed from French, and it's a very sort of Western idea, but it is in Asia, actually in China. It's actually also so true, in a sense, as and Shunan said, it's not really about. I guess it's also about the quality and taste, but it's also like authoritative, like a stamp, from the emperor, for example, like Sichuan pepper. There's one tract of land in Sichuan that used to produce Sichuan pepper, and then only that tract of land, the produce from that tract of land, can be tributed to the emperor. And now that piece of land is still there, and it's supposed to be the best Sichuan pepper, but I don't, not really. But that concept is so much in Asian culture as well. In Japan, obviously, there's a lot of the rice from Niigata is the best rice of Japan. So I thought that was just a very interesting. So not just a Western concept, but very much alive in China and in Asia.
Yeah. Gonzalo, do you want to give us your little bit of background of how, I know you have a very long history with wine as well, but kind of how you got into it and how terroir plays into your history?
Sure. Thanks, Cynthia. Well, since I was a child, in my family we always talked about wine. I had a few relatives in the past that were winemakers, and I never met them, but this wine culture was already in my house. I saw my mother drinking wine, my grandfather having a glass of wine, my father as well. So I had this idea, when if I ever became an older man, to work in the wine industry, produce wines, and travel around the world making wine as well. And it became true, and when I was in university in the 90s, the Casablanca appellation was booming. So everyone was talking about the Casablanca Valley. I love the Veramonte wines when I was studying winemaking, and I had a dream, and I said to myself, if I ever can work, I would love to work in Casablanca appellation, and it became true. So I'm really happy today to be able to work here and make wine and be able to live what Veramonte is doing today, because for me, terroir and Casablanca conditions, and of course what we do in Neyen de Apalta, which is it's a vineyard and winery that it's in another part of Chile, a little bit south. But Casablanca is a cool coast appellation influenced by the Pacific Ocean, so we have cooler weather. The soils here has a lot of granitic components, which is a very, very old rock that is decomposed. So we produce very fresh wines, of course influenced by the cool weather of the Pacific Ocean with higher acidity. But the varietals that we grow here, which are mainly Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Pinot Noir, are varieties that like the cooler weather, and the soils that we have here are the best soils to produce those varietals in Chile. Basically, what terroir, my interpretation of terroir is this combination between weather, the plant, the soil, and of course the person, the winemaker, the viticulturist in this case, that interpret how conditions are the best way to produce the grape and then to make the wine. So that's what we do in Casablanca. But if we move a little bit south to Colchagua, where our Neyen de Apalta winery is, it's much warmer weather, and it's very, very, very good for typical Chilean variety that is called Carmener, which is a red variety. It's a late maturity variety, and it goes actually really, really well with the spicy food, So in Chile, of course, we have also some tradition of a spicy food with a local spice that is called merquén, which is made by the Mapuche people here, and that variety goes really well with that kind of food. In terms of terroir, Apalta has different conditions than Casablanca, deeper soils, a little bit warmer, and we have very, very, very old vines planted more than 130 years ago. So we have very, very deep roots. And in those conditions, the vines grow very naturally and produce the best Carmeners and Cabernet Sauvignons in Chile.
Amazing. I love that you're living your dream.
With the Sichuan peppercorn.
Yeah, there's a combo there for sure.
I left a message for Gonzalo because I want to know the name of it. But I'm also curious. I don't want to digress to the conversation, but I'm just curious. How do you find a wine that works well with spice? Like what are the qualities?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Well, actually, the Carmener is a red variety that has very soft tannins, very, very soft tannins. Can have some without being sweet, like no sugar. It's a dry wine, but it's a little bit spicy. You can find some spice in the Carmener, and it matches really well with the spicy food because
this actually makes sense because tannins are also a kind of a sensation to your mouth and tongue. It creates that stringency on your lips and tongue. So it makes sense. So they probably complement each other. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Zhao.
I love it. I see a great collaboration coming from between you guys. It's a great tasting adventure. Okay, so our next question is for Brian. So last summer when I visited Sicily, my Etna guide was talking a lot about how Mount Etna both gives and takes. And it was this kind of really beautiful, kind of romantic idea of this, the volcano being something that's so integrated in everything that everyone who lives there touches, and how there is this big give and take. Of course, there's the danger, but also it gives great soil. It gives all these different things. How does that idea of like the land giving and taking affect what you guys do and how you farm there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. This idea of kind of a ebbs and flows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about, and right now is a really good sort of time frame for that in Sicily, especially where we are in the Dardanella Valley. It's a bit further west from Mount Etna. And what we see a lot is in Sicily specifically, and in these really deep valleys, is it gets really cold at night and it gets really hot during the day. It gets really cold at night, really hot during the day. And what you're doing is you're stressing those plants and those olives, and the the herbs that are growing there. And when you have an organic process and it's not monocropped or fed with a bunch of fertilizers that are non-organic, you're really stressing that fruit. And what we find is the more you're able to stress it and they're still able to grow, is you're going to get a complexity of flavor that you might not see otherwise. The way our farm is set up actually is we have this fresh spring that runs through the middle of the farm, and that's how we feed all of our trees. So we have a gravity fed system, so that we can kind of turn on the water or turn it off depending. And so actually you can even see the difference in terroir in our own farm, just on one side of the stream versus the other, where one is more limestone based and the other is more clay based, and the clay will retain more water, so we typically don't water it as much, so that the trees maybe aren't getting lazy, so to speak. And the limestone drains quite naturally, so those trees are typically stressed a little bit more. And I think that is kind of coming into this idea of the land kind of giving and taking and giving and taking, and kind of putting that constant stress and making a more complex overall product, which is really interesting. One thing I'd also like just to touch on, and Shunan, you kind of mentioned it and then like briefly moved on, and Gonzalo, you also touched on it as well. And I think when we talk about terroir, we talk about like a taste of place, right? And oftentimes we just think of the land that's providing it, and maybe the crops or the agriculture that we're growing from it. But what you two briefly touched on was the humanistic factor of it, and really the folks that are on the ground all the time, they're also listening to the land, right? They are feeling the land, they're feeling the energy, and they're so in tune with what that season's harvest is becoming and what it's going to be like, and being there every day. It is also a part of the terroir, or the taste of place, is to have those folks really work with the land, right, on a day-to-day basis, and understand what those vines will need, or what the peppercorns would need, or olives, or tea trees, or whatever may have you. And I think that's a very important part of this entire conversation, is about kind of how the humanistic approach is involved in the land as well, and how we're kind of working with it rather than just trying to maybe stamp an imprint upon it, right? So that we can create a really good, an incredible end result. And so, yeah, when I think of the giving and the taking, it's kind of all of it. It's kind of working with that and understanding how to move with those ebbs and flows, rather than just kind of just trying to put your own imprint on the land and just having that be that.
Yeah, that's so very true. I know that I've learned a lot of that through Shunan, also with tea processing, how, there's no cookie cutter answer to anything. It's like you have to watch the leaves, you have to watch the plants, you have to understand them in this almost like inspiringly intuitive way. And I think that only comes from exactly what you're saying, Brian, of just like the day-to-day, like truly understanding this land and the plants. Shunan, I know that you're in tea country right now. Do you want to touch on that with
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's very, very true. So, in the tea industry, I have a saying that if you want to make mediocre tea, you can always call on the timing when you're processing tea to say, this is the time that I'm going to shake the tea. This is time the fermentation is done. This is time I'm going to dry the tea. But if you want to make really, really great tea, then you will have to listen to the tea. The tea will tell you when it's ready for the next step. And the same principle applies to tea cultivation as well. So when we're talking about how to take care of a piece of land, oftentimes depends on the goal, right? So there's always the goal to yield more buds from a piece of tea field. Then you might run into practices such as the usage of herbicide, over cultivation of the clone cultivars and fertilizer to help the tea grow faster. But if you want really, really good tea, then you have to take the slower approach where you want to leave some other plants and trees to coexist with tea. And you also want to like Brian said, kind of almost like intentionally stress the tea trees as well, because that the plant will have to adopt a more complicated metabolism to cope with the situation, and that will synthesize more complicated compound, and as a result that give us a more complex product, which speaks sophistication in terms of the aesthetic of taste. So all that kind of goes together. And because the weather every tea season change so rapidly, there are also lots of decision that a tea farmer, tea maker will have to make every vintage as well. So it's very stressful for the human as well in a lot of ways. But that comes from years of knowledge. I'm so impressed at the TC region. The farmers, they always have more accurate prediction on the weather than the weather forecast. Because I oftentimes go with the weather forecast, right? And I had to plan certain things, depends on if it rains or not rain, because if it rains, it just kind of ruins a lot of things. And but if they say it won't rain, and usually it won't rain, even the weather forecast said it will rain, but if they say it rains, it often rains. And also pre-harvest, during the winter, especially before Chinese New Year, how the weather is like. They oftentimes have very good prediction on what the harvest will be, and when the budding will happen, things like that. But still, you can run into very irregular situations. Like this year, the region I'm in right now called Lushan, it's already a very cold tea region. The tea didn't bud until like April 12th, and it didn't start harvesting until April 15th. But then very quickly, after 3 days of cooler weather, it very quickly ran into hot weather, and the tea grows really fast. So they might just have a very short tea season. And these are the situations that the tea maker will have to cope with. And also that has consequence on the processing as well. So once again, they have to be able to judge what the tea wants to be, and then shift the processing method accordingly to this particular vintage.
Yeah, awesome. I think this is a great topic to have touched on. My next question will be for Yao. I wanted to talk a little bit about how you built a brand off an ingredient that, as you had mentioned too, that like many people in the West had never really experienced or tasted or had known about. And I just was wondering what the journey has been for you, not only educating people about the food itself, but then also including the importance of terroir into the conversation, and what that like education process has been like for you building your brand.
Yeah, I think compared to Italian food or tea or wine, Sichuan pepper needs a lot of education and introduction, right? It's just really something novel and new. I think it was not easy, but I feel like I got very lucky. So one thing is I still feel a lot of imposter syndrome because I'm trying to do something new, a new sensation. Do people actually like it? I still am trying to get over that. I don't think I'll ever get over that. But somehow my theory is that I think people like stimulation in their food. Wine, tea, or chili peppers. People like to feel something. Like when you drink wine, that tannin, the stringency you feel on your tongue, right? That dryness. People like that. So in my mind, I think, okay, I think people can also embrace a new sensation, like a tingling and numbing sensation. So that's the basis of my business idea and my theory. So now, to introduce this to more people, I think you have to make it very approachable. So we started with the oil and the peppers, but I think the barriers of entry is a lot higher. So we started making snacks. We make tingly peanuts. We make we're developing a lot more. We have a lot of product ideas, and then people just snack on tingling sensation. They really like it. So, but in terms of education, the terroir, I think I'm with Shunan. I think I myself are I sort of a quote unquote nerdy person. I like to read research papers. The fact that actually my brand name 50 Hertz is from a peer-reviewed science paper, because that paper concluded that tingling numbing sensation on your tongue and lips is equivalent to 50 Hertz of vibrancy. That's the vibrating frequency you feel on your lips and tongue. That's where I got my brand name. It's not a junk science. Actually, it's published in Royal Society in London in a science journal. So I really like that. The science, the food science, and the and things behind the story. And I like to tell that story. And I think because of that, I attracted also quote unquote nerdy customers. I got very lucky. We were mentioned in the New York Times at the very beginning of the business, and so overnight we amassed a decent amount of customers. And who read New York Times? I think the people who are interested in knowing more about the world, knowing more about the food. So I think that's just like a perfect match. And also I love telling people, like, that's why I'm on this panel with all of you and learning. Actually, I learned so much from Shunan and Brian just now. Actually, like the testing and stressing the plants. That's so interesting, and creating interesting compounds within the plants. So that's how I'm doing. So I like so two things. One is education. I love doing education, and our customer love the educational aspects of it. But also, I think you have to make your product tasty. You have to make it so approachable to people, especially when I'm doing something so novel. So yeah, still very, very early stage, but I'm having fun.
Well, from personal experience, I can say I think people do like the experience of the taste because it's very delicious. Yeah. Gonzalo, my next question is for you. You've been in the wine industry for a very long time, and I'm wondering if you have seen either where you are in Chile or you've worked in a lot of different countries, but has the attention to sustainability in these very famous historic regions evolved and changed, and has the idea of conservation changed since you kind of started in wine? What's that been like that you've seen?
Okay. Well, sustainability and organic practices have been there since many years ago. Our ancestors already, were doing things in a very natural way. But at least in Chile, when I started working back in the 90s, most of the Chilean wine industry and wine producers were not using any sustainable and organic practices in the vineyards and wines. And within these years, we have seen, especially in the last 10 or 15 years, an increase in the way companies and wine companies are producing grapes and making wines and selling wines. I think because we are changing, we as humans, as winemakers and viticulturists, are seeing this need to protect the environment and to make more healthy wines, not in terms of lowering alcohol levels, but because we all want to drink and and eat healthier food without chemicals, more tasty, more natural as well. That's why yes, I see the many companies are increasing their sustainable practices, organic practices, and in different ways. What we have been doing in the last 10 years, we changed to organic and biodynamic practices 10 years ago, and our philosophy in Veramonte is, we call it living soils, and that is what makes Veramonte unique wines. Living soils is a synergy of the vineyards, so we respect the origin of the environment, And this is the environment that gives unique character to our wines. The way we don't use any external fertilization, so we just use the manure and our compost, and with minimal intervention as well of the way we cultivate the vines, the way we make the wines. We use also native yeast that basically live in the vineyards, live on the skins of the berries, and those native yeast don't give any external. So they just ferment the wines, ferment the grapes, ferment the sugars, produce alcohol and CO2 and some other compounds, but we're not using any dry yeast that are produced, let's say, in France or in Italy. So we use our local yeast that comes from the winery. So that's the best way to give our own character to the wines. So we're very connected to our ecosystem. We're trying always to regenerate the soils and protect the biodiversity of the wines. That's why around the vineyard we have more than 2,500 hectares of native forest surrounding the vineyards. That helps to protect the flora and fauna around the vineyard. As I said before, not just us, but many organic producers don't use any external chemicals. So no fertilizers, no herbicides, no fungicides that interfere with the natural harvest. We produce our own compost as well, with stems and pomace that we collect from the harvest, and we blend it with manure that comes from local animals. These practices also increase the biodiversity in the soil. Also, we have some sheep and llamas that help to eat the grass, the cover crop, and mowing. They eat the grass, especially during the spring. This helps to aerate and minimizing the compacting of the soil during the winter. Also helps as natural fertilizers. Besides this, we work with 8 different biodynamic preparations. 2 of them apply to the vineyard, and 6 of them apply to the compost. Besides that, and I want to talk a little bit about this. We just don't make just wine and grapes, but also we're helping the community around us. That's why we developed what we call a collaborative garden, which is a joint venture with the municipality of Casablanca, our local town, that helps to and benefits small rural farmers. So basically, we give 4 hectares of land to these local producers, and they cultivate the tomatoes, lettuce, flowers, organic, of course, and then they sell it in the local market. So that helps also. It's part of our commitment to sustainability and protection of the land. Along with this, we have a fair trade certification, which is called Fair for Life, and we help the most vulnerable workers in the company, and they choose to help other workers that suffer from some chronic diseases, and we help them with the easy access to healthcare. Basically, whenever we sell Fair for Life wines, which is a certification, we pay a small amount of money. And also the importer of this wine pays a small amount of money. In total, it's like a 5% of the sale, and that money comes directly to the Fair for Life project, and it goes to the people that needs that money. So That's the way things are changing in the last couple of years. And as Veramonte and Neyen de Apalta, we are part of that change, and we're pioneers in Chile and in South America. And we try to make a better world, by doing this every day.
It's more than trying. You guys are definitely doing. It's great to hear. Yeah. And I love that you bring it back around to kind of what we've been talking about a little bit, that yes, this is about the land, but it's also about, the history of the people that have been on the land, the people that currently live on the land. Yeah. And also I see the little sheep behind you. So they are definitely present. We do have a question in the chat that I do want to make sure that we get to. Someone had just asked, I would love to hear about the impact of organic certifications on farmers. It's my understanding that the process is invasive or possibly expensive. Does that hit for any of you guys? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about what that process is like for you?
I definitely want to talk a little bit about that on tea, because I think that's a huge topic for tea, and there are lots of misunderstanding of what it means for tea. So long story short, organic tea actually does not really speak that highly of the quality, because I think this is to do with the very special historic position of tea as a product. So tea in China has such a long history of cultivation. So when we talk about historic tea region, the tea trees were actually not planted by this generation. They were planted by past generations, where the practice were much, much more sustainable and biodynamic. So organic is actually a concept that applies to modern agriculture. So in the tea world, as soon as somebody says organic tea, it actually already tells us this is not from a historic tea region. It means that you had to do find a modern solution to sustain a practice that in nature is not that sustainable. Sorry, I think I found a bug. And so this is why I wanted to jump in and mention that about what organic means for tea. So only very large facilities and large plantations usually go with the organic route, because without being organic, then you have even just the regular plantation tea, which definitely is monoculture, that's very damaging to the environment. But just know that in the tea world, a lot of the farmers in the historic tea regions, they don't really have incentives to get certified, because they have connoisseurs that recognize their special position, and also recognize that being organic in the tea world actually is not a, how do I say, it's not a bad thing, but it's kind of very limiting. It talks about that you are actually in a different tier, that it's not from historic terroir, if it makes sense.
Yeah. How about any other industries? Is there a different understanding of the process, or anyone else want to touch on this?
Yeah, well, in our case, there is a big difference between the conventional wines. So most of the wine production in the world, in terms of volume, it's made in a conventional way, using, as I said before, pesticide, herbicides. But there is a portion of the wine production in the world that is produced organically. In terms of and some of the most expensive wines in the world, and the most special and highly rated wines in the world, today and many decades ago, have been produced using organic and biodynamic techniques, as we do here in Veramonte and Neyen de Apalta. And that kind of range or certification is very well accepted today in many countries. There are some countries that are not they don't really care about the difference between organic and conventional wines. But as I said before, consumers are changing. Younger generations are willing, to pay a little bit more for an organic wine. but it's something that is changing every day. So it's not massive. And today we don't have really like clear markets in which we sell organic wines. There are some specialists, some wine shops, or some monopolies in Europe, that buy organic wines. So sometimes you go to wine shops or supermarkets and you see special shelf, a special place within thousands of bottles in which you see, organic wines. And that's a category that is growing. We see a big growth in Chilean wine that is moving from conventional to organic. So I see a lot of potential in the organic wine, and I hope many wineries and many consumers become organic wine fans in the future.
Great. We are coming up on our hour mark here, but the last kind of topic that I wanted to kind of have you guys all touch on, because I think it is something that most of you guys had mentioned, is this idea of heirloom plants. So when we talk about terroir, we obviously are talking about the land, but what do we do on that land and what kind of plants are we cultivating from? So this is kind of a throw out to anyone if you guys have something you want to speak to it on. But yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about how heirloom plants play into your products and how you guys produce.
Sure, I can start. Basically, everything that we do is heirloom varietal, and I think one of the ideas behind that is to not go in the way of GMO, and because we are organic and because we are more of a biodiverse farm, to have multiple different heirloom products and to make sure that we have them. Basically, what we're talking about is having genetic diversity, right? And when you have a stronger diversity of whatever it is in olive population, and there is maybe a potential disease that hits one specific varietal of olive, it may not affect another one. And so in that way, you are being able to limit the amount of potential destruction that could happen. That's one side of it. I think that also having heirloom varietals will just also give you better overall flavor diversity, right? We have multiple different Biancolila varieties on the farm, one of which is basically unique to our farm because we found only 2 trees left in the wild. And so when we're able to make sure we're able to hold on to a wider variety of heirloom or ancient agricultural products, I think that just kind of benefits the uniqueness of the sort of ecosystem that you're trying to develop from a farm perspective or whatever sort of land that you're working, and trying to create more diversity there and complexity so that it's less likely to have any sort of detrimental effects to the land, right? It's kind of working together as a whole versus just one specific item that could, then be more of a cost to the land overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think in the tea world, heirloom is also so important because, first of all, culturally, historic tea region is rare places where we're still able to see large volume of heirloom tea trees. And once that's also replaced by clone tea trees, you just kind of lost that forever. So which it will be a very sad thing for me. And another thing about heirloom tea trees is that it further provides complexity for taste. So as a final product, if we're looking for complexity and balance, heirloom tea trees have greater potential for that as well. And of course, so heirloom tea trees are basically the ones planted with seeds through sexual production of the two plants versus just clones. I often compare that with human. Just every single human ever existed are all different from each other, and that's the diversity we want to see. And I'm a firm believer that's the diversity nature intent things to be. So when you have clone tea trees, I think that eventually will always lead to monoculture, which is not sustainable and is very damaging to the environment. Another thing about heirloom tea trees is that some of the oldest tea trees right now are heirloom tea trees, and they're like hundreds of years old. So talking about that romance I was going after, I know that I'm actually having tea from the same tree that were enjoyed by past connoisseurs. That's definitely a sentiment I treasure very much. And also, since it's Earth Month, and we're talking about terroir, heirloom tea trees are native to that piece of land, and it's older to that land. It draws better flavors from that land. So if we're talking about being able to taste the land, there's no better representation for the land than the heirloom.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we only do have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that you guys can all plug a little bit about where people can find stuff. I think this has been a really amazing conversation. I hope everyone that's been watching kind of learned something and can take something from this. But yeah, if you guys could go around and just let people know where they can buy your products or follow you guys on socials. I'm going to have everything loaded into the description of this video as well. But yeah, if you guys want to just give a last little goodbye and kind of where people can find you, that would be great. Gonzalo, do you want to go first so we can kind of go around in the circle?
Sure. Well, we have an importer of these wines in United States that is called González Vías, USA. And we can find our wines in many different wine shops and supermarkets in United States. So there is not a specific place where you can find it. But also we have an Instagram, which is called Veramonte Wines in United States. So you can follow us in Instagram as well.
Great. Shunan.
So our website is teadrunk.com. You can both purchase our tea on the website. There are also lots of educational articles under the section Learn. If you really, really want to dive deep into tea, we also have a platform that's dedicated to tea education, which is called Tea Drunk Academy. So it's teadrunkacademy.com. Our Instagram is just @teadrunk. And right now, because it is tea season, you should also join our Facebook group. I think it's called China's Top Terroir Tea Season 2023, something like that. If you just search the keywords, you should be able to land on that. And you can see all the actions in the country right now.
Great. Yeah.
We're at 50hertzfoods.com. That's our main website. And there you can read my story, but also there are a lot of recipes if you want to cook with Sichuan pepper. Some of the recipes are quite interesting. They're not just the mapo tofu or kung pao chicken. There are pasta, there are popcorn, there are many, many other applications there, and it's growing. We have Instagram, also 50 Hertz Foods. We also have a Facebook group. People share their recipes. Cynthia, you should probably put your chili oil making with our peppers in the Facebook group, if possible.
I can, for sure.
We are also in boutique grocery stores in New York, DC, San Francisco, Portland, where I'm at right now, and a few other places. So yeah, I learned so much today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. And Brian, how about you?
Sure. You can find a lot of our products at bonafurtuna.com. You'll find all of our products there. We have distribution throughout the US, so should take only a few days to get to you if you order anything online. You can also find us at Bona Furtuna Farm on Instagram and Bona Furtuna on Facebook. And then we're in a bunch of different natural independent stores throughout the US, a lot of specialty stores. And yeah, just like everyone else, we have bunch of really fantastic chef curated recipes online, a lot of information about our processes, kind of what we're doing, our impact reports, and all that other fun stuff. So yeah, come find us, and we'd love to talk with any new customers or old customers.
Great. Well, thank you guys all so much. This has been really fun, and happy Earth Day. I hope that everyone gets to get outside tomorrow and enjoy nature. Great.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.